going to be supporting McCain, the Green Party candidate for president. But people are telling me I might as well be voting for McCain. What do you think about the third party and supporting third parties with respect to electing the worst of the two evils?
I sometimes wonder with regard to the Green Party if we should be talking about a third party or if we might not do well to see the Green Party as a second party. The Republican and the Democratic positions on foreign policy are so similar. Their obeisance to major corporate goals and control are so similar that I don't really see a two-party system functioning adequately. So I kind of see the Greens as a second party. I wouldn't let anybody bully anybody into thinking, oh, well, then you're just casting your vote toward McCain. We're walking from Chicago to St. Paul, Minnesota, a 450-mile walk. Probably the inception of it was our own sense of appreciation for two projects we'd worked so hard on, the Occupation Project and a project aimed at the aspiring presidential candidates. So in the Occupation Project, we went to the offices of elected representatives, congresspeople, and senators. We occupied those offices saying we want to hear from you how you will end the war in Iraq. And with the other project, we went to the presidential campaign headquarters of Obama and McCain and Huckabee and the whole works. And we found ourselves focusing on people in legislative work, but not wanting to do that exclusively. We really wanted to focus on the actual electors, the actual citizens in the United States whose ideas we believe are overwhelmingly anti-war, but who perhaps need to be knit together still further to become more and more of a movement that will say we will not any longer put up with the incredible waste, the waste of human lives, the waste of needed resources, the waste of a generation's future that's represented by this war. So we decided we'd walk from Chicago, the site of a very famous Democratic convention during the height of the Vietnam War. And we want to link together the responsibility of Democrats and Republicans. So we're walking from Chicago to the Republican National Convention. And all along the way in Wisconsin, we're pointing out that there are 3,500 Wisconsin National Guard on call-up alert for combat duty in Iraq in 2009.
And how's the response been to the walk?
Well, it's interesting. You know, when we were in Racine, people in many places were hanging out of their cars and cheering us on and, you know, very voluble, go, we're with you, thanks. There are places where people have been less than enthusiastic, but I would have to say that in every situation I've seen where someone has actually stopped and perhaps talked with Paul Melling, who's an Iraq vet against the war but was stationed in Iraq for 14 months, when they talk with some of the younger people who say, look, you know, this is our future too, I tend to predict correctly that it'll taper down in terms of angry energy and become a good exchange and a dialogue. And that's part of the value of these walking exercises.
And why do you think it is that if the majority of Americans don't believe in the war, they're really not doing anything about it?
Well, you know, I often think about in Iraq how lamentable it is that the majority of Iraqis say they want the United States troops out. The BBC poll that was done showed 82% and up wanted the United States to leave Iraq. They'd rather have an outside group be entrusted with helping them maintain some kind of order. But their representatives in the parliament can't be relied upon to express that sentiment. Well, I think, we should understand that here because the majority of Americans want this war to end. But we can't rely on the elected representatives to fulfill that will. I think in the United States, the particular feature is that the major corporations that are running to the bank, their portfolios are stuffed with money. I'm thinking of Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and General Dynamics and Westinghouse. These are corporations, Kellogg Brown and Root, Halliburton, Blackwater, that are profiting so highly from a continued maintenance of the war. And of course the major oil corporations wanting to make sure that the United States has a proxy government that it can control, and not so crazy about a proxy government that Iran can also control. You know, these are elements that are functioning in a very concerted effort to make sure that the U.S. public desire to bring the military home won't be fulfilled, because they haven't yet fulfilled their greedy and really rapacious and looting desires.
So you have one Iraq veteran against the war marching with you guys?
We're so fortunate to have Paul Melling marching with us. He met our friend Dan Pearson, who's a major coordinator of this whole effort in Minneapolis. And so he came to Chicago. He's basically walking home. And he's so sturdy. You know, when people ask him, well, you know, what's your view about what would happen to Iraq if the troops were to leave? He says, well, you know, the people who are telling you there would be chaos are the same people who told us that we would be bedecked with flowers and welcomed when we went into Iraq. And then he says, suppose China were setting up major bases in the United States. Do you think you as an American might fight against that? And so, of course, people can start to see the logic of what he's saying, plus the credibility of his own status as somebody who was in Iraq with the military. And then we have many people who were in Iraq, not with the military, but with peace groups. And we want to say, look, these people were right in the first place. We often make the analogy also that to say that by giving money to the awakening groups, which are mainly Sunnah, younger people that are given AK-47s and a salary to carry that AK-47 and work with the United States military. And then, as happened just last month, also offered to Muqtada al-Sadr's people $300 a month and an AK-47 so they can man checkpoints. Keep on bringing in those AK-47s. Keep on paying people not to get a regular job that might help rebuild the country, but instead to think the only really lucrative job is to carry a gun for somebody's militia. Sure, there will be more chaos when the United States leaves. Unquestionably. Stop bringing in the guns. Turn that money over to groups that are able to help with rebuilding. And there are such groups. I've seen them operate out of Amman, Jordan, doing what they sometimes call remote management, but they have the connections. They have the wherewithal. If they weren't facing the fact that the donor dollar is in free fall, they have the wherewithal to make a significant difference in rebuilding. But don't give the money for rebuilding to Halliburton, Kellogg, Brown and Root, Floyd, and now Secor, this British corporation that's only mandated to make sure that if there are auditing groups trying to trace corruption, they'll be stopped at the door of Secor. There's a $150 billion 10-year contract that the Pentagon has signed with Halliburton, Kellogg, Brown and Root, Floyd, and Secor. Secor being the group that's going to prevent the auditors from ever getting their hands on the information again. I mean, in the past, you could at least say that oversight groups, like the Special General on Iraq, Stuart Bowen, they did come up with the statistics about just how much money had been squandered, how much corruption. The Parsons Corporation, for instance, had been asked to rebuild something like 160 mobile health clinics. And they worked on 4 of them, pocketed the money, and left. So we should know. We should know about these kinds of financial dealings that the United States engages in, because actually these increase the insecurity of people here. When we occasion intense anger because people in another country feel they've been swindled by the United States, they've been cheated, humiliated, imprisoned, their children's future has been wrecked, they feel that their country is in a shambles, and other countries, neighboring countries, think, well, we sure don't want that to happen to us, maybe we better get a nuclear weapon or some kind of real weapon of mass destruction. It doesn't guarantee security for U.S. people when $3 trillion is going to be the price tag on this war. That money is desperately needed in order to cope with the real terrors that are coming right around the corner. We can feel it. Our security doesn't rest in the hands of major corporations, people who were in the unions that built this country in terms of the labor movement. They knew that. We know it, but we have to act. We can't expect that the 6-year-olds are going to take care of it. That's not rational. And there are people who love their grandchildren. They love them well, and they're not so caught up in, you know, the rush and the pace of American life. They've got some reflective time. And I really rely on that generation and also the very youngest coming up to join forces and say, we have to get a grip, slow down, think about where we're going and how we're going to get to a better place. No time, no room, no money for all of these weapon-making corporations. It's time to just pull the plug.
The cacophony of voices that had offered up resistance were abandoned and left stranded. I heard vandals running through the garden. watched them carry off the sun. And a solitary stranger came to make his bargain with a dollar bill and a smoking gun. So pray for the child who drinks this water. Pray for the child who breathes this air.